Hello team, welcome to another ATP Geopolitics video with myself, Jonathan MS Pearce, and I'm super glad to be joined today by Zarina Zabrisky, whom I've spoken to, interviewed twice on the channel already. Always a delight to have these chats, and we've talked about many different subjects within our conversations. We've talked previously, I think the first interview was concerning the topic we're going to return to today, because there's been some developments with regard to what's been called the human safari in Kherson. Of course, it's not just Kherson that suffers from this. We must remember that, but Kherson seems to be like the most obvious example and the most widespread example. I mean, we can wonder whether Sumy and Kharkiv are really now going to be in the sights of the Russians as well, sadly enough. And they are much bigger cities, Kharkiv particularly, than Kherson. So, you know, does Kherson offer a foreshadowing of what's going to happen elsewhere in Ukraine? I don't know. We can mention that. But anyway, Zarina, would you, I know most people know who you are, just give a brief reintroduction to your good self. And thank you for coming on.
Well, thank you so much, Jonathan. Thank you for your coverage of Ukraine, for your attention to Kherson. That wasn't always easy to get the light on it now, and we will talk about it, why it's becoming a bit easier. But very quickly, my name is Zarina Zabrisky. I'm an American journalist based in Ukraine, currently back home in the United States, in Texas, and traveling to Los Angeles tomorrow to cover the protest against ICE, which is seemingly a different topic, but it really is not, and we'll get back to it at the end of the conversation. I would still like to focus on Ukraine, on particular crimes, war crimes and crimes against humanity, as has been established recently by both United Nations Inquiry Committee and Human Rights Watch teams. And there is a lot to talk about in the context of everything that's going on in the world, Jonathan.
Okay, well, yeah, absolutely. And I guess maybe one of the roots into this is an example, right? And then you can explain to us again, I know most people will know, but you can explain to us, you know, what is going on in Kherson in particular, and, you know, what the Russians are doing. So here you wrote just 14 hours ago, Kherson region, human safari, a Russian drone attacked a child, 11 in the yard. He received explosive and craniocerebral injury, concussion, shrapnel wounds to the chest and leg. Kherson, power and water outages as Russians hit critical infrastructure. So that's
Yes.
just one example of many, right? Just pick that out. Just going down your Twitter feed. I'm sure I could find many others.
Yes.
Give a sense of what's going on.
Yeah. So what I'm trying to do here, now that I'm based in Kherson, but right now I'm traveling and doing other reports, I keep my focus on Kherson anyway, because unfortunately, due to the dangerous, risky situation there and difficulty of getting the access there are no foreign journalists based in Kherson. There are foreign journalists coming to Kherson to visit and write and then live in Kherson. And there's no coverage on a daily basis. So kind of, since I've been based there for so long, I'm trying to fill in this niche and doing at least several reports of what's going on, because these attacks, and not just the small FPV drones, but aerial bombs in particular, and then the usual artillery, tanks, mortar, are increasing. They're not stopping, but they are getting worse. Just last week on June 5th, there was a major bombardment, we can say carpet bombing of the downtown Kherson, when 4 aerial bombs, 500-kilogram bombs, were dropped on the central square, just 5 minutes away from my place where I walk every day, my grocery store. And the iconic White House building was first hit, and there was a big piece of the building missing. And then because it was a targeted hit, later, the first attack was at 5 5:20 in the morning. Then at 3 p.m., another larger bomb came and demolished the building completely. And here in the video, you see this building, which is no more behind me. This is my last day in Kherson. And I had some sort of, I don't believe in any kind of supernatural things, but I had some kind of premonition, which I believe is natural. When you're under fire every day, you might assume that most buildings will not be there when you come back. So it was a very poignant moment. And here you see this building with the roses that are there. And my last interview on the ground in Kherson was with the workers, the communal workers who are tending to these roses. And this amazing lady, Olga Churikova, wearing a armored vest and a small device to detect the drones around, told me why they attended to the roses. She told me her son was killed. He was in the army just months before that. It was very, very emotional. And now seeing these pictures for me, I report, I'm a journalist, but it's not easy to see this kind of destruction happening. But it continues every day. So, for instance, when the reports from the United Nations and Human Rights Watch came out, they were like 5 days apart. They established several war crimes and crimes against humanity. One of them, here you see the video, by the way, where
So it took one hit. Did it take another hit, or did it fall down?
No,
That
that, like I said, this you see the 5:20 in the morning hit, and this is 3 p.m. hit.
Right.
And
Wow. Okay.
I will talk about it a little bit of what happened there. But I just wanted to say that both reports of this international bodies recognized several war crimes and crimes against humanity. Some of them were hitting and targeting the hospitals, targeting medical personnel and hospitals and civil infrastructure is a war crime. If it's organized by the state, it's a crime against humanity. And the Russians never came up with any sort of official answer. By the way, they were asked to comment while the committees were working on these reports. The answer never came, but that was their non-verbal answer. They continue to target hospitals. They targeted the week after the reports were out, and they continue to target them every day. And as you can imagine, there are so many injured. There could be up to 10 people, civilians, a day injured by FPV drones, by artillery shells, by remote mining when people step on mines. And when they're being taken to the hospitals are then targeted. And of course, Khersonians, Ukrainians, being as creative and invincible as they are, they build underground facilities. They build underground hospitals. They build underground playgrounds, theaters, whatnot. So a lot of hospitals are operating underground. For instance, the maternity hospital is underground now, and for a good reason too, because the other day a maternity hospital in Odessa was targeted and damaged. It happens a lot. We've seen a lot of reports from maternity hospitals around the country being hit. And then the Russian propagandists pick up on the narrative and say that Ukrainian military hide some weapons there. Well, as somebody who's been based in Kherson for almost 2 years, reporting from these hospitals, I can tell you as an eyewitness, as a reporter, there are no military objects near these hospitals. That there are none. I have photographs, I have videos, and I've seen it myself and checked it many times. So yeah.
I was just going to say, one of the most powerful images, I mean, obviously that's incredibly powerful, but there's something moving about that, you know, that I think you referenced it just earlier, that bit in the middle of the top of the building that fell down here with the trident on, you know, it gives a sense of I mean, there's a lot of symbolism there, isn't there? So, you know, they are targeting here an administrative building that I don't think really has any military importance, but they're also just murdering civilians on a consistent basis.
Yes.
In the
Jonathan, that building was empty for a long time because it was targeted before and was damaged on the side. There was a giant hole on the side of the building. There was nothing in there, and it's an administrative building, but it has this symbolic meaning because that's where the occupational authority was based during 9 months in 2022 before they had to leave. And that's where Zelensky arrived on liberation. I was there. I filmed him. And this episode, among many other episodes, is going to be in the documentary that I'm now making about Kherson. So this building is kind of like this pulse and heart of Kherson. And the Russians decided to hit it. And what's interesting, I wrote a piece for Byline Times about that. I don't think it was spotted elsewhere, but Putin personally was supervising the operation of destruction of the downtown Kherson. I found it. Yes, that one. Thank you.
So I've actually, can I read this? So I've actually, funny enough, I think I've excerpted this. Because I think this is a really important point of the article here. So it says, in response, Russian forces launched strikes not only not on military positions, but on civilian infrastructure in Ukrainian-held Kherson. Vladimir Saldo, the Russian-installed head of occupied Kherson, said Russian President Vladimir Putin, quote, was closely monitoring the situation as Russian troops fired guided aerial bombs, FPV drones, tanks, and artillery at Kherson city center. Grocery stores, the central post office, residential buildings, and administrative offices were destroyed. While Ukraine targeted military infrastructure, Russia escalated deliberate attacks on civilians under direct presidential oversight. Putin praised, quote, the effective actions of the Russian military, saying they made it possible, quote, to reduce the possible consequences. Under international humanitarian law, political and military leaders may be held criminally responsible for war crimes if they knew or should have known such crimes were being committed and failed to prevent or punish them. So what you're doing here, Zarina, is you're very clearly setting out that particularly Vladimir Saldo, who's the regional administrative head for the Russians, and by implication here, according to Saldo, Vladimir Putin, are both culpable here for the war crimes of destroying and buildings, but more importantly, killing Ukrainian civilians there in the city center or in the city.
Yes, absolutely. That was the intent of this article, to point it out, to have it on record. And that's not obviously the only crime. There's already the Hague warrant for arrest for Vladimir Putin being issued for kidnapping children, which was happening in the Kherson region, among other places as well. And we covered that in the documentary as well, by the way. But also the United Nations and Human Rights Watch recognize the human safari, the small drones hunting civilians, as war crimes for which potentially Putin, who knows and monitors the situation, is culpable, is responsible. And it is a very important point right now, because I'm going to make this connection and connect the two worlds that seemingly are unconnected, but it is not true. I'm on my way to LA to cover the protests, and I found out that the local authorities in Los Angeles confirmed that they are using military drones to help immigration authorities, the ICE, for raiding, and they're going to be using it to monitor the protests. There is a connection there that, you know, if the use of military drones against Ukrainians, Kherson, is left unpunished, we will have those drones in the cities around the world, and the authoritarian regimes and governments could start using these drones en masse, terrorizing citizens, not just in Ukraine, but globally. And it's possible.
Funnily enough, I wrote an article with Brendan Kelly, and I know Brendan Kelly has been doing a lot of data analysis for what's happened in Kherson. I wrote an article, "The Future of Murder: A Guided Missile for the Poor is Changing the Face of Targeted Killing." So, and I know that's not what's going on in LA, but there's this kind of mission creep of the use of drones. But we are seeing drones being used around the world. We've seen them used by cartels in Mexico, by gangs in Israel, even like a number of different places around the world where drones are creeping into society and being used as a tool for murder. But there is nowhere more obvious that they're of their use than in Kherson, where they are used to hunt down people on the streets. And in fact, they're in the Human Rights Watch piece, they have another reference to the red zone. I know Brendan Kelly's talked about this previously, and yourself as well, that there's this area of Kherson, either side of the river, but particularly on the Kherson side, where the Russians are using these drones to possibly train themselves to hunt down moving targets and then go and apply what they've learned to the battlefront elsewhere. But they're training dummies, if you like, are human beings, men, women, and children, old and young alike, in Kherson, and blowing up cars as they're just driving through the city. You've got first responders, which you reference in your article here, threats against journalists and first responders. You've got, it's the whole range of things taking place, which interestingly, Human Rights Watch and the UN have now formally recognized as a war crime.
Yes, that is correct. And there are a couple of good points here. This so-called red zone was just announced randomly, and both reports are saying that they have no right to announce a civilian area, residential area, military zone. It's random. It doesn't have any meaning, actually. But nevertheless, the threats are being issued, and that's because the primary goal of human safari, as both reports have concluded, and which is my opinion as well as somebody who worked on the ground, is weaponizing fear and terrorizing civilians in order to actually carry out forceful displacement. And that's the conclusion of both Human Rights Watch and United Nations. And that qualifies as a crime against humanity. It's a state-organized campaign to move people, civilians, away from their homes. That's a crime against humanity. And that brings us all the way back to my article on the mass bombardment of Kherson on the 5th of June, which the point is that these crimes, whether it's human safari or kidnapping of children or attacks on civilian infrastructure using whether drones or aerial bombs, should be punishable. They shouldn't be left alone and pass by. The global community needs to focus on it, needs to acknowledge the crime, and insist that the elected politicians and the bodies who have mandate to do so prosecute the criminals.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just looking at the summary here from the United Nations, or this is from Human Rights Council. I'm going to read, if you don't mind, a couple of paragraphs from this to just give people an idea. The Commission further found that obviously there's lots of other stuff detailing the horrors that the Russians have committed. Commission further found that Russian armed forces and those supporting them have committed acts or threats of violence for the primary purpose to spread terror among the civilian population. That's what you were just mentioning, in the targeted areas of Kherson province, in violation of international humanitarian law. So that is definite. They found that they have committed in violation of international law. So that is to say they've broken international law. The nature and broad range of the attacks, their specific civilian targets, their frequency, intensity, geographic spread, the circumstances in which they occur have led to pervasive fear within the population. The public dissemination of videos of attacks and threatening text announcing further attacks in the above-mentioned area referred to as the red zone have exacerbated the fear of the population. A resident of Kherson province who witnessed 8 drone attacks stated, quote, "They want to inflict horror on the city." end quote. The posting on Russian Telegram channels of videos of civilians being killed and injured amounts to the war crime of outrages upon personal dignity. So they're saying that amounts to a war crime. Then they say, in the Commission's view, the conduct of the perpetrators may amount to the crime against humanity of forcible transfer of population. So although they're being more definite on those other sort of war crimes, they're saying it may be also a war crime of forcibly moving people out of Kherson. That could be one of their intentions, to try and basically, if we can't have the city, you can't have the city type thing. The widespread and systematic character of the attacks, the terror instilled within the population, and the ensuing coercive environment have compelled thousands to flee. In addition to attacking civilian persons, drones have repeatedly targeted civilian objects and infrastructure, all means of transport and emergency and rescue services. The damage and destruction of houses, the absence or limitation of services, essential infrastructure and transport have rendered the affected areas unlivable and left many residents with no other choice than to seek safer locations. These elements combined suggest a coordinated state policy on the part of the Russian authorities to force the population to leave. And it also talks about other things as well. So I thought that, you know, that gives you a good sense of kind of what here this particular organization think, the Human Rights Council.
Yeah, I would just encourage anyone who is interested in the international law and sanity, I would say, to check out these reports. There are summaries as well. The United Nations report is only 16 pages, but there's also a summary. And the Human Rights Watch did an excellent job also presenting it in the interactive form, sort of New York Times webpage, where you can see it's probably not this one, but there's another link where you can click on the drones, you can hear the sounds, you can watch the video, you can almost find yourself there and experience it. I think it was exceptionally well done.
It's interesting that this piece on Human Rights Watch also has recommendations for Russia, recommendations for Ukraine as well, and for all states in general, to commercial drone companies. So, and indeed, you look how long this. I mean, that's a long article, and we get down here, and actually, you've got all of this here. I don't know if they are just other articles, or I don't know. It's just more. Looks like that's more information. I mean, it's a huge long piece, this, in Human Rights Watch. So Hunted from Above is well worth. I think that's linked. If it's not now, it will be linked in the description below.
Yes, and so this is 193 pages. Another one is 16 pages and very dry. And I understand that not everyone has time or attention span amongst all the other things that are happening to read these documents. And this is one of the reasons, Jonathan, why I'm a writer, but I switched to a new medium to me, which is filmmaking. And I've just finished the documentary, full feature documentary about Kherson. Before only was a associate producer and a journalist in the previous documentary on Ukraine. But this is the film 2 years of work, and it will tell the story through the eyes of Khersonian, through the voices of Khersonians. It's not another film. There's a genre these days, and it has its place in cinematography, where the foreign journalist featured as almost heroically arriving somewhere, and it's a story about foreign journalists. This is not what I wanted to make. There's enough of that, although there's not enough of films about Kherson period. But this is a film where only Khersonians appear, only Ukrainians appear. Our crew, for the most part, is Khersonian, Ukrainian, working on the site, not just working, but living through explosions, flood, occupation, liberation, losing houses. It has a different quality. I was just a medium there, just basically, so, I didn't hold the camera all the time, but I filmed some, and I just focused, let's go there, let's go here, let's speak to this person. Anybody in the street is a voice of Kherson. It's sort of like a Greek choir the chorus where all the different voices become one, and then the character is really the city of Kherson, and it includes the nature, all the broken trees. It's such a green city, and you see everywhere the splinters, the ruined beautiful buildings, and there are a lot of classical architecture there, and then you see it ruined one day by day by day. The animals, the city, the urban nature, from anywhere from pigeon to cats and dogs, and is actually a city based on the river. So there are all kind of other animals there. There are pheasants there. They used to have wild hogs there, but I believe they left there. And so that's also included in the film. It's how what happens to the city when it's just out of nowhere rudely attacked by an invader, and what's happening for 3 years, and how the city survives, about the strengths of the people, about the meaning of art during the war, meaning of inner spiritual life. It's about 90 minutes, and we're following several families for 2 years almost, and here we have the trailer.
Yeah, I'm not going to play the whole trailer just in case there's a copyright infringement on the music. But I just
we have the license for everything, so
yeah, only I won't have the license though. But I just wanted to show the end of this trailer. Please, everyone, go and watch the trailer. Kherson Human Safari. But I thought this comment was so good from this guy here. I thought it was absolutely on point.
Они говорят, что они победили нацизм? Нет. Они забрали его себе.
I just love that. They say they defeated the Nazism. No, not true. They've just appropriated it, and that is such a powerful statement. But anyway, I'll play the end right through to the end of the trailer.
Они забрали его себе.
Пока мир спит, мы здесь умираем.
So that is a documentary that is that then completely finished? Is that trailer representing, is the whole project's finished?
Yeah, it's finished, and we are now in talks with the distributor platforms, and our team of producers is deciding the best way to show the film. Our goal is to have this film seen by as many people as possible. It's not a commercial project. It was sponsored by private people who just wanted to help Kherson. So whatever proceeds there will be, it will all be going to the city of Kherson and to the army units defending it. And the goal is awareness. So, on the one hand, some people believe that we should go for festivals because more people will see it this way, but it's too long of a wait. And I, as a director, I believe that perhaps that's not the tradition. Nothing is traditional about this film or documentary about the situation or about Kherson or about this film. So, most likely we will find some way which is not traditional, with the goal of everyone seeing and finding out, the film about Mariupol, which was amazing and won Oscars. It was shown after Mariupol was already A, destroyed, B, occupied by the Russians. Kherson is still there. It's not occupied. It's free. And it's being destroyed every day. So now is the time to see this film and help the city. And that's the goal.
Yeah. It's so sad to see Kherson become this, each day a more and more degraded city, a shadow of its former self, a skeleton of its former self, really. And it could have been, and it was, a vibrant riverside city, culturally important, on the edge of that south, the whole southern area. It's almost a bridge to a region, and yet now it's a place that has become a military football between the Russians in Ukraine is already, the Russians have, as I said earlier, if you can't have it, we can't have it. That's their kind of approach. And it appears that, it is just been a tool to wreak havoc on the Ukrainian people. And it's just very, very sad to see.
Yes, Jonathan, I'm going back there after I do this other type of reporting here, and also working on promoting the film and screening the film for private screenings. But I'm going back to Kherson, and I'm mortified to think what I will not find there, because every day I speak to people, and every day things are being destroyed, things are dear to everybody's heart, things that became so dear to my heart as well. And that is very sad.
Yeah, you've written a good summary in the Kyiv Post of what's gone on there. Russia's human safari in Kherson deemed a war crime. Kremlin is trying to systematically turn the city of Kherson into a wasteland by targeting civilians. A UN report now documents Russian tactics and classifies them as war crimes. So that's a good summary. If you want to find out about all that we've talked about, that's probably the latest piece there that takes into account the UN and Human Rights Watch findings. It's pretty succinctly there. What give us a sense of what sort of experiences people in Kherson have had. What are the sort of tactics that the Russians are using with their drones there?
Yes, very briefly, like we have mentioned that previously on the shows with you, and today, the human safari is not the only tactic that Russians are using, because of the proximity and being so close just across the river, which in some places less than a mile, they can reach and target the residential area, which is not a red zone. It's just I lived in that red area. It's just the regular buildings, high rises or private houses, a lot of them there. And so every day, all day long, you hear the buzzing of the drone. The explosions are every 10 minutes or so, sometimes nonstop, day and night. And you hear sometimes sounds that you don't even know what they are, and that could be anything from a Shahed, which is Iranian made or Russian make after Iranian model, buzzing by at night, flying to Mykolaiv region and towards Odessa, or they could be ballistic missiles. Occasionally there would be an Iskander, which doesn't make any sense because it's very expensive and the damage is not, it doesn't make sense.
It's not militarily particularly useful.
No, it's just terrorizing. And then, of course, aerial bombs, World War II style, London Blitz style, do the job. When the aerial bomb hits, everything in the city jumps. If you're sitting on your couch, the couch jumps, the walls shake. As we have mentioned before, there are pretty much no windows left intact. Everybody's having wooden windows. I'm still, I'm back in the States, and it took me a while to get used to having regular glass windows or getting used to the thunderstorms. I'm in Texas now. We have a lot of thunders, and it takes a while for the body not to react to the thunder as it would react to artillery, which is to say, not much. It's not like in Kherson or in Odessa, I run for the bomb shelter. The bomb shelters are very far. There's curfew, and you'll probably be hit by a drone or something else on your way to the bomb shelter. But your body gets into a different state, or at least you go to the bathroom on the hallway where there are no windows, so there's no shrapnel to wound you. And less and less stores are open. Yesterday, I was talking to a friend and listening to a streamline because the Russians hit the civilian infrastructure in Kherson. The water and the power went down, so the refrigerators in the stores were unable to keep the food fresh. So the daily living, as both reports have mentioned becomes impossible, and the goal again is is to displace people. And I'll give you one example, and then maybe we can talk, like, connect it to the broader picture. I've been following and reporting on the life of this one family for almost 2 years by now. And there's a young couple, they were expecting twins, but because they lived close to Antonievsky Bridge and there was a lot of aerial bombs, the young woman lost one of the babies. So they eventually had one child. Their house was destroyed. Their house at the time was damaged. It was in 2023 in the fall. They moved, and I connected them to some volunteers who helped them to move out of the region. They moved for a while to be in Odessa region, where they lived in an unfinished house with no roof, and then in Mykolaiv, where the Shaheeds hit the area, and they were very scared, and they just went back to their house, repaired it, and lived there for about a year until the drones started to attack it, because it's the coastal area, like what the Russians are calling red zone. About, I forgot the number, but in dozens of drones came and destroyed the house one by one. They were making holes in the roof and then dropping the Molotov cocktails like devices and setting the house on fire until the house burned completely. And this family, there's also a mother and a brother. There are about 5 adults and 1 child. And they're also feeding all the animals, all the stray animals, abandoned animals around. So they had like 5 dogs and several cats, and they wouldn't live without these animals. And then I was involved in helping to organize the rescue operation. Nobody could come there because the Russians are looking for the responders and for evacuation vehicles and target them with the drones. And finally it was raining, and at night the neighbor came and took the whole family out. And now they're in Kherson, but in the area where they are now, which was considered safe before, is not safe anymore. And finally, they want to move. And they contacted me 2 days ago and said, Zarina, help us to move. We can't. We give up after 2 years. We can't live here anymore. And I have articles and videos made with them kind of following. This family is not in the film simply because it was impossible to fit everything in 90 minutes. But I have a lot of stories. I'm probably going to be covering it in a book because I want to document all of this. This is just one family living their life, and it's really devastating to report that.
When I was in Kherson in January, February 2024, so this is a year and, I don't know, 3 months ago, 4 months ago, it was just about, it was all right for me to go there. It was a bit hairy. It was very hairy, actually. You could hear outgoing and incoming artillery, and then in the guest house I was in, which apparently is no more, it must have been hit, and it was very close to the river. My windows were rattling, but I've got a few images. These aren't my good camera images. There's a little camera as I was sort of driving through Kherson. But when you talk about the boarded up windows, this is what Kherson looks like so much. Everything's got chipboard over the windows, and it's just it's such a shame. It could be a really culturally vibrant place, as I mentioned. Sorry, this is just driving past, but again, everywhere you see chipboard windows. That is Kherson to me. Deserted streets quite often, or streets with very few cars or people in them. Shops at the time, there weren't that many shops open. What you could see were like lines of market stalls. People would use like little market stalls rather than shops. I don't know if that's still the case, but yeah, just all sorts of images of a city that is something of a ghost town as to what it once was, and just signs of destruction everywhere. And it was heartbreaking. As a little coffee shop I frequented that was open, but I doubt it is still open. Like you say, so many of these places no doubt have closed down. But yes,
There are still quite a few of them open, but a lot of life went underground. There are restaurants underground, very few, of course, it's not the time when you go to the restaurants, but they're there, and they're still, like what we do show in the documentary, what many people have hard time believing, there's a very rich cultural life continuing in Kherson, and I will never tire of speaking about it. I've been to about 5 or 6 theater premieres in a bomb shelter, and I couldn't even attend all of them because there was so much going on the weekend. There are poetry readings, there are master classes in anything, painting, embroidery, singing, there are dance classes, a lot of gyms and sports classes, a lot of things for children. Right now, there's one Czech volunteer from Czech Republic opened a studio, underground studio for the teenagers who still live in Kherson for filmmaking. And they attend that. There are chess clubs for kids. I attended the boxing studio when one of the champions of Ukraine is training. She's 14. I mean, there's rich life. And I mean, people get together to play games in underground, like board games. It's not when
But
you
I
just...
don't.
Yeah,
I don't
sorry.
understand. Yeah, but I don't understand, Zarina, because that's incredible, right? But why then do people not just move to, say, Mykolaiv? Like, why would you hang on to life in Kherson? I know there's that kind of like,
Jonathan, so many reasons, and we address that in the film. People talk about it. For one thing, is practical, right? There's also practicality to life, because the move requires money. The state of Ukraine helps, but it's only about 2,000 hryvnias, which is by now divided by 40. It's not a lot of money. It's not enough even for a rent or for anything. If you are a displaced person, you will be living in a school gymnasium with a lot of other people. And we're talking about people who are used to be living in very pleasant conditions. They have big houses, they have kitchen gardens, they have cottages in the villages, or they have very nice apartments. I mean, I live with the wooden windows, but my apartment is beautiful. I mean, I love it. It's so comfortable, and you have hot water, you have everything there. And why would you move to live with 100 other people in gymnasium, especially if you have children or elderly? But
is it just the money then? Because like moving, you've got your place in Kherson, and to move from Kherson to Mykolaiv is going to just be prohibitively costly, even though, so that means you're putting up like this idea that there's I don't know. I did the maths last time we were speaking. I'm sure it was with you. Whereas, like, this is how many people are being struck a day. This is how many people live in Kherson. Therefore, you got this chance, essentially, really basic, but it's a really statistically high chance, considering the probability of me getting struck by a drone walking down to my local one-stop shop here is like 0. I'm not going to be. Yet that's not the case in Kherson, and so you've got this kind of real possibility that every time you leave your apartment, your house in Kherson, that you are dicing with death.
Yes,
and that is significantly higher as a probability than in, say, Mykolaiv, which is 60 kilometers away. So it's like money against life.
But that is not just money. You see, that's where
not just that. Of course, it's not just that.
Yeah, the main idea here that whoever wanted to move already moved, right? But the people who are still living there, this is their form of resistance. That's their form of fight, because they know if they move, the Russians would come. It will be easier for them to cross the river to gain these territories and to make Kherson the Russian Federation. And people are defiant. They do not agree with that. It's their home. And I mean, I lived within this community for so long. I feel it, I feel their sentiment. And many of them say, why should they have my place? It's my home. I'm not going to give it up. Like the man who says the Russians appropriated the Nazism, he lives in the house by the river and refuses to move, even now. And his house has been hit so many times. So many times. Actually, our crew stayed at his house when we first moved there, and it was immediately hit because some collaborators reported that their foreign crew working there. So we had to move, not to endanger him for one thing too. But he just fixes it again and again. His car was hit, I can't even count, like now, more than 10 times. He was injured. But he, like so many others, like pretty much everybody in this film, say, no, this is us. We are not giving up. The other man, also the main character in the film, says, it's a test. It's a test of my strengths. Every day I'm asking myself, who am I? It's a choice. I'm going to do it. Then the director of photography of our film, Alexander Andrushenko, who is a photographer whose house and the archives of 30 years of work were left in the occupied area on the other side of the Dnieper. He lost everything. He stays there to document it. It's their fight. And so the war is not only in the trenches, not only on the front line. The war is right there in Kherson, and that defiant spirit, this spirit of celebration, the women who get together in the yoga studio with shattered glass in the windows, or because it's all glass window, you know, they're having Hawaiian parties there as artillery is booming outside. Literally, I've been there, I've done there, I've been going there for so long. And that's their rebellious act. They ignore it. We have a meditation in yoga, and there's a drone flying by, and nobody's paying attention, and that's resistance. And that's the heroic spirit of Kherson, of Ukraine, and I so want to show it. It's remarkable. I think, to me, it's the highest of the high of the humanity that they show. Their love for the animals, for everything that they are protecting, their city, the nature, the roses that you see in front of ruins that Russian made. All of this is the tribute to the human spirit, as opposed to the lowliness of the other side. So it's almost like, like Tolkien, Lord of the Rings continuum, or the different space. I mean, I don't want to make too much of a literary allusion here. It's real life. That's what's happening, and that's what's remarkable.
Yeah. Well, I suppose my point is kind of like Ninu saying here, like Zarina's right, but if I had children, and that's the thing as well, it's like, it's one thing to make that decision or concerning your own life, right? But if you've got children, I can imagine that many people with children have sent their children away or gone away with their children, and you're left with the older, maybe often more vulnerable, left in many places, the last to clear out. So yeah, you will have your brave souls, but I mean, are there many children left? Because I remember remarking that when we were driving through Kherson, that actually I think I only saw one child possibly in the entire time we were in Kherson, and that was quite remarkable.
Well, that is correct. And again, when you just visiting, you simply don't have time or opportunity to see what is really going on anywhere. Is it, it happens when even if you visit, I don't know, Thailand on vacation, it's like the same everywhere. But no, there are quite a significant amount of children. Like I said, there are all these clubs, there's online schools. I know a lot of children. In fact, in our film, the vocalist is a schoolgirl. She's 16-year-old. Well, now she might be 17, but she was 15 when I met her. She studies singing, and she goes to school just at home. There are no schools where you can go to. There are playgrounds that are protected by the temporary bomb sheltering. I have pictures of that there, on my social media and some articles that you see. It's downtown, like on the central street. You see the playground and children are playing there, but they are surrounded by the temporary. And it's true. It's a personal choice. I wouldn't have my family in Kherson. But it's a choice by everyone. Like, for instance, I know a family with a toddler, and they became good friends, you know, as I lived there. And I managed to talk the wife to leave, to take the toddler out to Odessa. And the husband stayed. In 2 weeks, the wife with the child were back because they didn't want to leave, you know, life separate from their father, from the husband. And that's, you know, families don't want to separate. And there's so many, each story is different. And the reasoning for everybody staying is different. But to answer the question about children, yes, there's still a lot of children there. And they're being targeted, just like yesterday, a drone targeted an 11-year-old. And you do see them just not in the street.
Yeah, and Mark Bisky, who's in Canada with his wife Olena, and Olena's from Kherson, as I often mention. In fact, my Vishvanka is from Mark and Olena, and I forget the name of the scarf for women that she
Huska.
Yeah, yes. And that book on philosophy is from her mum and dad's house. And she went to college or university in Kherson, Olena. But anyway, Mark says, who's watching, although we plead with Olena's family, they will not leave. So they live in Srinarivka, which is not too far. It's up the Inhalets River, I think. Anyway, he says that they will not leave to join us in Canada. They refuse to leave. It's very much an act of defiance, which is kind of what you say. And yeah, so that's thank you very much, Mark, by the way. But interesting viewpoint there, and firsthand evidence of people being defiant and wanting to stay. Kevin Ford said on April 22nd, Zarina reported, quotes, a Russian FPV drone hit a hearse leaving the hospital to bury a man killed by another Russian FPV drone. Just think about that. And yeah, it's just absolutely horrific. And JMT Politico said, it's horrible, Kevin. My last post was in Kherson. So this is someone who has been out in Ukraine, which was the area I was in the longest out of the 1.5 years of being there. So yeah, things are definitely challenging in Kherson.
Yeah, that's all we can say. And I will continue to report because I speak to people in Kherson several times a day, and they send me the videos, they send me the photos, they ask me to share this information. I'm honored to be able to help. There are a number of other people covering. You mentioned Brandon Kelly is one of them, has been consistently putting out the data, statistics, analysis, the Tochny, which he's a part of group doing this work. There's a Canary in NAFO volunteer who collects all the publications about Kherson, and now there's a mega thread that I just shared where you could see all the publications ever on Human Safari, and I believe that will be very useful eventually, you know, because everything is there. And Kalen, of course, he came to Kherson twice. He stayed, last time I wasn't there, but before we stayed in the same building. Kalen, of course, is a good friend. I don't know Dylan Burns, but I believe he was there. People do come. There's a lot of reports looked at Canary's mega threat. There's so many articles. It's just not making the bigger, broader press, I think, for a reason, because every single major publication at this point, or a channel, had a piece on Human Safari. But my theory, and you can argue with me, I might be wrong, that the reason it's not as well known is the denial, because it's just so horrendous that the human psyche refuses to accept it. And I spoke to a couple of psychologists who said that that might be the reason.
What frustrates me is that scenes from Kherson as an example, but so much, you know, any of the horrific things that are experienced by Ukrainian, whether it be you know, things like POWs being executed, like drone footage of POWs being executed by Russian soldiers, or civilians being targeted by drones in Kherson, needs to be shown to Donald Trump, to the Trump administration, to MAGA Republicans who are in denial about Ukraine and Russia. It's like you can have whatever like. I sometimes dream of having these debates with people like John Mearsheimer or Jeffrey Sachs, who are like, oh, you know, it's NATO expansionism that caused the war, and just want to show them this footage. Like, I don't give a toss what you think caused this war. The war that's going on now is a war of war crimes. Where do you think is acceptable because of NATO expansionism, which I will disagree with anyway. But let's assume that is the cause of the war, right? Is it acceptable that Russia 3 years on are killing civilians and murdering civilians and committing war crimes and executing POWs? Because that's totally unacceptable. If you're still living in a world where NATO expansionism is what you think justifies Russia doing what they're doing, then you're sadly wrong. And so I just want to show them the most horrific footage to say, like, what do you think now? Because this horrific footage is asymmetrical. It is happening predominantly as a result of the Russians doing terrible things to the Ukrainians, not the other way around. You look at the airstrikes that are taking place. The Ukrainians are doing their level best to make sure they're hitting critical infrastructure to do with the military industrial complex or military bases. They are not purposefully throwing munitions into Russian apartment blocks or following Russian citizens with drones. It is asymmetrical and it's disgusting. And people who have the wrong opinions about this war need to see the reality of the war on a daily basis. Face the facts. Anyway, sorry, Zarina.
Thank you. That was very well said, and I believe so, and I agree with you. But I want to know that this footage will only have impact on someone who still has moral compass. Unfortunately, in big parts of the world and on individual basis too, it's lost. And part of it is the information warfare, of which we speak a lot. And the part of it is the Russian ability, Russian science, and Russian multi-million industry on brainwashing, not just their own population, but the global community as well. And when we are talking about the facts, when we are reporting the war crimes, we always need to remember that we will be gaslit, that there will be the whole toolkit of tricks developed for hundreds of years and now fortified by artificial intelligence and digital networks that will be minute by minute bombarding and changing the reality for so many people. And it's a constant fight. And unfortunately, especially what I see now in America, and I always stop in Europe, I have reasons to be there as well. There is no awareness of hybrid war going on. People in, well, proverbial West, or just let's say globally, believe that the war is local, that the war is only happening in Ukraine, and it doesn't concern them. That is just simply not a fact. That's not true. It's incorrect. There's a hybrid war going on, and everybody basically at this point is affected politically, economically, culturally.
100%.
And we see that right now. I see that in the States. We have a very, very changed political landscape from the time that I left my home in San Francisco to report on Ukraine. It's been 3 years. I come back to a different country. We have raids in the street. We have authoritarian government. We have the lack of freedom of speech in which America is priding itself in. And these changes are a part and the consequence of the hybrid war. The worst part about the hybrid warfare, though, is that it is invisible. And so people cannot associate these changes with the overall campaign that is going on.
It's interesting that Merz from Germany and the Germans in general appear to be really ramping up the rhetoric and the communication that we are involved in a war, that NATO Article 5 is being ignored by Russia. And I think Germany are leading the way in saying that they're talking about Kiesewetter, one of their MPs, was talking about disinformation, really working hard to counter Russian disinformation. So there seems to be a greater acceptance that they are that from Germany that we are involved in a war with Russia. I think the same can be said about the UK. Actually, we just had a strategic defense review, which pretty much points out Russia as the threat, and obviously, but I think there is this recognition that we are involved in this war. I've long said that we are in World War III, whether people realize it or not. But unfortunately, there are still too many people that think that this war is, far away and not affecting them. But it is in so many ways. Russia has its ways of affecting our societies, either informationally or with cyber warfare, attacking hospitals or undersea cables. It's just, Cheryl has put me in my place because I just had that rant against people who are ignorant. But God sent Trump to save us from nuclear war, JP. So you put me on my place. Yes, evidently yeah. You are part of this fight back against this lack of knowledge about what's going on with this documentary. And you're obviously looking for that to be picked up. I mean, really good luck with that, because rather like JP Lindsley, who was advocating, I don't know if he's involved in the manufacture of the documentary, but there was the Faith Under Siege documentary, which is an attempt to get to particularly those right-wing MAGA Republicans in the US who are Christians more often than not. And so the question is, how do we get these people that need to change their minds to change their minds? So let's take this route through appealing to something that's very, very important to them, their Christianity, their faith, and show that people who are very similar to them, with a similar worldviews to them, over here in Ukraine are being persecuted by the Russians. In the same way that your documentary is saying, look, here are people trying to live their lives as normal citizens in this culturally vibrant city, and look what's happening to them, but by the grace of the cosmos, this could be you. And that's your approach into this. So all of these jigsaw pieces fitting together to try and give an account of the war and keep this in people's minds and consciences, so that they consciousnesses, so that they are routinely reminded of the terrors that are going on, and hopefully do something about it.
Very well put, Jonathan. And I might have some differences in views with JP Lindsay on the political.
You and me both, yeah.
But it's an admirable effort to try and reach to MAGA and change their peace of mind. I mean, hands down, I'm not that brave and I'm not that optimistic. This is not my audience. And I have to say that my audience is not politically defined for this film. It is really for anyone, anybody who's a human, to see how other humans are surviving, what can happen if the evil goes unpunished. It's way more broad. It could be a MAGA person, for all I care. I don't know very many MAGA persons. On a personal level, maybe it's after living in a war zone, maybe just my character. I have a very low level of tolerance when it comes to certain things. So I'm not trying to say unbrainwash the Russians or MAGA or anything like that. Some people can do it, it's not me. But what I can do, because, first and foremost, I'm a writer. I have novel, I have several short story collections, I write poems. And literature has a broader reach. Literature is, by definition, bigger than politics. It encompasses, it's everything at once. So the film has more of that angle. It's not political. Everything is political, okay? But the film is more, I would hesitate to define the genre. Somebody says it's creative nonfiction, it's creative documentary, it's this and that. I don't know. There's no genre. It's showing the life of the city during the war, as is, all the aspects. That's all there is to it. To anybody who is a conscious member of a global society at this time. And I know that many people will say they don't want to watch it because it's too stressful. I already had that happen. And in my own environment, friends and loved ones said, oh, we don't want to be upset. We don't want to be stressed. It's too much. We had this and that, hard day, COVID, whatever, whatnot. We don't want to watch it. And it will happen, and I don't know it, and it's okay. And I respect, that people need to protect their own mental state and health. But if we all protect our mental health and seclude ourselves from the external world, this world is going to fall apart. And that's the other thing that I've learned living in Kherson, that what really saves individuals is community, the power of community and the ability of people to support each other, especially in hardship. And that's a lesson hard learned. And this is something that is also in the documentary. So I would encourage to get over the initial resistance and watch these kind of movies, even though you may find it challenging.
Yeah. Somebody has reached out, Putin Puppets reached out and said, hi, Jonathan, this amount is for Zarina, as I lost her payment data while she regularly needs support for her great and courageous work on the front in the city of Kherson, etc., as well as with all kinds of important info that she has on the Russians. Tomorrow I can't watch. So he had actually posted that before we went live, like yesterday. So let me know and I can send that to you. But thank you very much to Putin Puppet for doing that. Let me know, whether it's you personally or whatever you want me.
Thank you. This is fantastic. This family I was just telling you about relocating, I'm trying to collect funds for them, for the children. I'll send the article. I'll share the article. You can put it in the link, and it will be going straight to them, and it covers half of the amount they need to relocate to Mykolaiv region. So thank you from the bottom of my heart. That's
amazing.
Yeah.
So thank you to Putin Puppet there. And anyone else, I'm sure, if I put the link to the article, does the article have ways to help them? Because I'm sure
no, it's just a regular article in my home paper in Fresno. But I'll send you. I usually connect people directly to the families. I don't collect money as a journalist. It's not something that we do. But if you want to help, please reach out, and I will connect you to so many families who need help there. Yes, so please do.
Yeah, absolutely. And just a few thanks from the channel. Thanks to Johnny Christensen from Denmark. Thank you very much to Kevin Force, who's very active in the live today. So thanks, Kevin. Really appreciate the support. New, saying thank you to Jonathan and Zarina. Obviously, thank you very much to Mark Bizq. The Weasel has, and I read your message this morning, actually, Weasel, on the YouTubes. Got to get in touch with you privately, JP. I'm sure there's a cheap, easy way to stop all drones so easily, and that's what I'm going to come on to speak to Zarina to kind of, I guess, finish this off. But best way to get hold of me is to go onto Discord, join the Discord server. It's linked below, and then try and friend me, and then send me a private message through that. It's probably the easiest way. But although I don't look at Discord nearly as much as I should. So thank you to Weasel anyway. So this is a question I really wanted to ask you, and I know you've talked about this a little bit before, but because I look at Kherson and think, well, the city is quite small, as in when you look at the whole front line, it is a relatively small area. And if you're flying drones at Kherson, you will have to be within, let's say, a 20 to 30 kilometer range of there. So you just draw a circle around there and you say, right, that's where all the Russian drone operators are operating from. And they've been doing that now for a couple of years. How are they still able to do that? How have the Ukrainians not been able to shut down the Russian drone operators there? And what are the Ukrainians doing? Are they having any success at all?
Right, great question. And I just sent you a link to the article where I cover some of that. That's for Byline Times, my interview with Alexander Prokudin, who is the head of the military administration, who is talking about what he calls the Star Wars and the tactics of protecting the city. And some of them at this point are obvious to anybody who's following the drone warfare. And that includes kind of like sci-fi sounding tools, anything from fish nets that are equipped and re-equipped and used to create tunnels or to create the canvases and awning to protect streets and to protect the markets. You were talking about, Jonathan, the other day.
Yeah.
I saw a picture of people using it in the streets. Then, of course, speaking from the weapon point of view, there are anything from laser anti-drone guns that are being used to just simply automatic rifles that are used. You hear them in the streets when you're walking down. There are more sophisticated, more modern guns that are shooting down. But the problem with the small drones that they're flying very high often, and it's hard to get them. You have to be a very good shot. Then, of course, there's electronic warfare. And that's called the war of frequencies, because in the beginning, when human safari just started to evolve, they called it a frequency war and would change the frequencies every day. So the Ukrainians will figure out on which frequency the drones, the Mavic drones, FPV drones are flying, and jam it. So the drones lose control and fight. And then the Russians would change the range and the Ukrainians had to follow. And it's like a game. It keeps going and going and going. There, for individual protection, I have it when I'm in Kherson. Other people have it, the drone detector. That's a small unit which you carry around and make this horrible buzzing sound when drones are in vicinity, and they're in vicinity all the time, so it's buzzing nonstop. But the detector, the audio drone detector, also reacts to pretty much any device. It could be your Wi-Fi, it could be your phone. So to me, honestly, it becomes almost obsolete. We just switch it off because it buzzes all the time. And you see, also, where I live, I don't need the drone detector. I hear the drone buzzing by my window. I hear the skid, which is the explosion when they drop the explosive. I hear it. I don't need the drone detector. But of course, for volunteers who drive to rescue people from coastal areas, that's been useful. I've been on these expeditions quite a bit, and there we can see the number of these drones, and we know when to choose, when to go, when not. There are radars, on the roofs of the vehicle. Sometimes you see a vehicle passing by with devices on top, and it's electronic warfare, sometimes two at once. And I've been working quite a bit with the military in the area. It's not easy because you have to get access, you have to get the permit to report, and then your report goes through many press offices and all the military commandment because for a good reason, because they're operational security, and you don't want to give away anything that would help Russians to kill civilians or to target the military. But I've been on such trips quite a bit, and I have been releasing the videos on my X, and I have been writing articles for Euromaidan Press for their new defense blog, David versus Goliath, and my series is on drone fare. So my last article is on the drone underground factory somewhere in Ukraine. It's not in Kherson region, it's somewhere out there. And it goes in detail on what is being done to build up the drone capability in Ukraine. And it's quite fascinating, Jonathan and everyone, when you sit in the dugout at night and you watch a Baba Yaga going and trying to demolish what they call the nest of the Russian drone operators who are targeting Kherson with human safari. I have this video on my X. I've been allowed to film that, and it was a successful operation. First, it was very windy, so the Baba Yaga wouldn't be able to drop the explosives, and it had to go away, go fight on the islands where the fights are going on nightly. It's in this article that I just sent to you, by the way, as well. And then eventually, after the Russian pilots who couldn't leave the building were not as prepared, the Baba Yaga came back and hit the building and destroy them. So they are trying, they are working on it, but you have to remember the Russians have way more manpower, way more resources, hence David versus Goliath. What do you do when the enemy has so much more of everything? So yeah.
So it's just an ongoing challenge, but interesting about the netting up around and we've seen that in so many other places. Of course, it makes sense to have that in the middle. We see it outside of towns on these logistics corridors for the military, so they can get stuff to the contact line and whatnot. But actually, in these cities, like in these towns like Kherson, of course, that's going to be incredibly useful as well. Well, look, is there anything else you don't think that we've talked about that you think requires a mention at all?
Well, I mean, I just want to thank you and your audience for being here for Kherson. I just sent you the link to this video where you can watch the Ukrainian. I think it would be a good note to finish the show with, to see how it's done. That the struggle is real, it's going on. And I suppose two messages. One is the team I've been working with put so much effort and risked their lives so much to accomplish this documentary, to bring you the slice of life from Kherson. I encourage you to follow me or follow up with me and watch this documentary. It's 90 minutes. It might be a little shorter, actually, depending on what distributors say. And I think it's a critically important piece of documentation. So that. And the second, support the people of Ukraine, support the people of Kherson in any way you can. If you want to help, I'll connect you with the families again. I can connect you with the military units. They need cars. I was talking to the military the other day. They're desperate for the cars, and anything helps. So,
well, we do a lot of fundraising, and we're going to do a summer campaign for a group called Car for Ukraine. In fact, I'm literally wearing their t-shirt at the moment. So Car for Ukraine, we have fundraiser heaps of vehicles for them already, and they are amazing. Ivan from Car for Ukraine is amazing. So if you want to put the unit in touch with Car for Ukraine, like that, they will be able to no doubt get them vehicles, because they're an absolutely amazing
very,
group.
very, very, very much so. This is the unit. That's what used to be the Territorial Defense Battalion of Kherson. This is civilians there in the film who left their jobs, their life to join the army to protect Kherson. They're still there. They're now called the Marines. There was a restructure. And these people are heroes. They crossed the river to fight the Russians there. They are, for what, they're not even human. In my books, they are gods, you know.
When I was in the Kherson area, I've got, you can't quite see it, there's a picture just up there. It's made with like crushed like glass and stuff around the side, and that is one of the units that was operating just up the river. They were, at the time, they were in Krinky, and they were supporting the guys in Krinky. And that patch there, I think that one there with the wolf's head was also a guy that was operating just out of Kherson area as well. So anyway, a nice connection to the people operating around there.
Yeah. I mean, I can see the patches from here, but I'm sure I know there are 3 brigades in particular that I want to help. The Kherson one, the Odessa brigade that is serving there as well, and I would be very, very grateful if we can help them. So that's there. Watch the film, speak about Kherson, help to raise awareness. That's what we can do.
So when the film comes out, you'll obviously let us know, and I will shout about it as much as I possibly can.
Share the trailer for now. That's, you know.
So the trailer, I think, is in the description to this video already. Yeah, it's the last link in the links for Zarina is the link for the trailer. So it is underneath. Go and check it out. Did you say you wanted to just play this video?
Perhaps. I feel that it might be a good way to finish the show. It's upbeat and shows the successful fight against these atrocities.
Excellent.
I'm about to report how Ukrainian soldiers fight back against Russian human safari.
Сьогодні ми прибули на позицію наших пілотів.
Нашою розвідкою було виявлено ПУ БПЛА противник. Противник цей використовує FPV, скиди, які, може всі знають, влаштовує сафарі в Херсоні.
Щоб зупинити ту саму сафарі на цивільних, довго за ними слідкували, де вони базуються.
А сьогодні ми будемо наносити вогневе ураження по ним.
Терміново їх уразити.
Зараз буде нанесення вогневого ураження. Зараз бомбер знаходиться на цілі. Беремо поправку, щоб влучити.
Поки наші пілоти знищують ворога, їхня аеророзвідка шукає нас. Розвідувальні болти типу крила, болти, які будуть наносити ураження також вже в небі. Працюємо швидко, швидко, ефективно і вшиваємо звідси.
Це що, да? В зв'язку з поривами вітра попали по будівлі. Зараз борт повертаємо.
On the way back, there's a manual mode that the pilot decides to use. This way it's much faster. If there's FPV drone, they can run away from it.
It's coming back. So here it is now. Just landed.
Ми не можемо по декілька разів на ціль вилітати, тому що вони вже будуть чекати нас зараз там.
3 рази просто може закінчити. Трагічно для бойових.
Летать, і вони вже підняли сразу. Радіоприхоплення. Тобто, якщо ми зараз будемо туди летіти, то вони нас вже чекають. Ходимо трішки на інший напрямок. Малими штурмовими групами заходять на острови. Кожного дня вони питаються зайти, вибити нас з лівобережжя Херсонщини, але в них нічого не виходить.
Зараз чекаємо, поки наші інженери підготують повністю дрон до взльоту, підготують бойову частину, спорядять на сам дрон. Як тільки він технічно буде готовий до зльоту, будуть приступати наші пілоти до виконання місії.
Зараз будемо їх уражати. Відпрацювали по місцю знаходження пілотів, 2 влучання, очікуємо на дорозвідку від наших пілотів.
So lots of attempts there, lots of activity concerning, countering the threat of the drones. But really interesting stuff there. Well, look, I'll tell you what, if you've got a contact detail for those, well, in fact, I don't know if you want to give me your, say, WhatsApp or something. I'll put you in contact with Ivan from Kharkiv, Ukraine, and if they need vehicles, then it sounds to me like that's a really useful group to, well, all the Ukrainian units need these vehicles, and they all deserve them. But yeah, it would be great if we can help them out down in Kherson.
Thank you so much. That would be great.
Well, look, thank you to all the people who have helped out with this channel. Thank you so much to the people who have, or like Putin Puppet, who has helped out Zarina. It's really appreciated, I'm sure. Interesting to hear from Mr. Squiggle that JP Lindsay got badly burnt on Dylan Live's live episode. He self-cooked himself, so I have to check that out actually, and I should have a chat with Dylan Burns. That's someone I haven't really interacted with particularly, so I'll have to reach out to him. And I guess I'll leave us with this, and I really should read Hannah Arendt's book on totalitarianism. It is it's been on my wish list for a long time. The greatest enemy of authority, therefore, is contempt, and the surest way to undermine it is laughter. And that kind of goes to this idea that, having joy in these underground places in Kherson is important for people to continue to feel the joy of life in these most dire of circumstances is a sure way to maintain the energy to carry on and to laugh in the face of this horror is sometimes a good option. Thank you very much, Zarina. Thank you, Richard, by the way. Thank you very much to Zarina for everything you do, and I guess I'll leave the final words to you.
Well, thank you, Jonathan. Thank you, everyone. I still believe that we will, we, meaning the good people of the world, will win, that sanity will prevail, dignity will prevail, and Ukraine will win. And stay with it. And again, just watch the movie to see for yourself. Thank you.
Absolutely. Well, thank you all. You take care, Zarina. Stay on the line. Take care, everybody, in the live chat, and I'll speak to you soon. Toodle pips.
Thank you. Goodbye.